In Haiti, a Caricom mission began its work agenda as agreed at the meeting in Jamaica. China denounced NATO as the true responsible for the world's problems due to the expansionist policies of the alliance. And in Indonesia, at the Asean Summit, China called for stronger cooperation and accelerate the process of regional integration. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Human rights activists have described the situation in Jujuy, northwest Argentina, as scary as more than 40 people have been illegally detained. Demonstrations against the unilateral constitutional reforms imposed by Governor Gerardo Morales have been brutally repressed. In the last hours, relatives of teachers, students, and members of indigenous and social movements have denounced raids and kidnappings. Furthermore, they claim that arrest warrants continue to be issued against members of different organizations and demand that the governor stop the violations of citizens' rights.
Here we are in Buenos Aires at a house representing the Jujuy province to denounce what the Morales administration is doing to native people, to our brothers and sisters, but also against what is happening in Cumbamarca and in Jujuy, where authorities are kidnapping, arresting, indicting activists, barging into their homes. We as social leaders consider it important to denounce what the Morales administration is doing in Jujuy. This is the model that the country's right wing wants to implement, and we will not allow Morales to do so. We say to Morales, enough with repression.
A few days before new mobilizations take place in Peru, the International Federation of Human Rights warns of the possibility that the government is drifting towards an authoritarian state. According to the International Federation of Human Rights, which comprises 188 human rights organizations in 116 countries, the government of designated President Dina Boluarte is co-opting democratic institutions and increasingly strengthening an authoritarian and ultra-conservative Congress. The report of this organization attests to the death of 49 people due to the disproportionate repression and says that such level of repression had never been experienced in the country. The organization's Deputy Director for Latin America, Natalia Yaya, expressed concern about the proximity of new mobilizations. Mexico's Attorney General's office confirmed the arrest of a former military officer linked to the forced disappearance of the 43 students from the Ayotzinapa school. Federal police officers arrested Francisco Narvaez Perez in Querétaro, in the north-central part of the country. Narvaez is accused of the crime of this forced disappearance in relation to the students who disappeared in Iguala on September 26, 2014. The former soldier requested his retirement a year after the facts. With Narvaez, there are now 10 militaries detained. The prosecution maintains that they knew of the complicity between local authorities and organized crime organizations that brought harm to the students. And in Haiti, a mission set up by the Caribbean States Community, Caricom, has already begun its work agenda as agreed at the meeting in Jamaica. The so-called Caricom Eminent Group is a mission that follows up on the stakeholders meeting, and it is made up of 3 former prime ministers, Kenny Anthony from St. Lucia, Perry Christie from the Bahamas, and Bruce Golding from Jamaica. The group has already met with the government, with politicians, with representatives of civil society, and they also expect to meet with groups from the private sector, from the informal sector, and the media. The mission was appointed by the Caricom governments to support the good offices of the community. The Actors Union of the U.S. Broadcast Federation, which represents Hollywood workers and actors, joined the screenwriters' strike against major studios and streaming services. The move comes after failed negotiations with the Alliance of Film and Television Producers on July the 12th. The union's chief negotiator, Duncan Crabtree, said the Guild's National Board voted unanimously to launch the strike against the studios and streamers because of their unwillingness to reach a fair agreement to protect the rights of working actors and performers. The union said that some of the key issues being negotiated are fair wages and the unregulated use of artificial intelligence in the industry. Michael Vaccaro, a member of the Actors Union SAG-AFTRA adds that the strike could go on for a long time and admits that the industry is willing to lose a ton of money so that they don't get jobs.
On the street, I think we've gotten to the point where there's just so much contempt by the studios and the streaming services that they are ready to lose a ton of money so that we don't get any. But I feel like SAG is partly responsible for this, because over the last 20 years I've seen them give away so much stuff, and to the point where I think the producers feel emboldened and empowered, and they're in a position now where, again, they feel like they don't need us anymore. They don't need writers, they don't need actors.
On Friday, the U.S. National Weather Service warned that residents in Central and Southern California over the weekend should prepare for the hottest weather of the year. As of Thursday, more than a third of U.S. citizens were under extreme heat warnings in the wake of a blistering heat wave hitting the nation. And according to the National Weather Service, spread to the West Coast, forcing residents to seek air conditioning or find other ways to stay cool in above 40 degrees. Highs could exceed 48.8 degrees Celsius during the day and stay above 26.6 degrees Celsius at night. Forecasters said the long-duration heat wave is extremely dangerous, especially for older people, homeless residents, and other vulnerable populations. On Friday, lava and noxious gases were coming out of a volcano in Iceland for a fourth consecutive day. The eruption started in an uninhabited valley near the Little Hurfur mountain, southwest of the capital, Reykjavik, on Monday. The area known broadly as Fagradalsfjall volcano erupted twice in the last 2 years without causing damage or disruptions to flights, despite being near Keflavik Airport, Iceland's international air traffic hub. Authorities urge people not to trek to the volcano, saying there may be levels of volcanic gases accumulating close to the eruption. Iceland, which sits above a volcanic hotspot in the North Atlantic, averages an eruption every 4 to 5 years. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the south. China declared NATO as the true responsible for the world's problems due to the expansionist policies of the warmongering alliance. China's permanent representative to the UN, Zhang Jun, said NATO overstepped geographical limits and pretends to exert its power over the world. The diplomat pointed out that NATO's actions have negative repercussions on regional security, and that by constantly increasing its military budget, it intends to provoke confrontations. The official stressed that NATO defies international order, violates the norms of international relations, and interferes in internal affairs by imposing unacceptable sanctions. Dmitry Medvedev, head of Russia's Security Council, shared by Russian President Vladimir Putin, visited TeleSUR range on Friday.
Just begun. This is the second time over the last year. What is enough? What is missing? What are the talks? What could be improved? Finally, my goal is to report to the Supreme Commander-in-Chief on how combat and political training is going on for everyone who will participate in the special operation. This is the objective.
U.S. President Joe Biden emitted an executive order to mobilize at least 3,000 reservists to reinforce the eastern flank of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization in Europe. Biden signed the resolution after returning from his European tour. Douglas Sims, Director of Operations of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, affirmed that it is part of the Atlantic Resolution, an operation launched in 2014. The Pentagon declared that this contingent will not be considered as additional troops, but will be available to provide support in the tasks that may be required. On Friday, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said Russian President Vladimir Putin had agreed to extend the Black Sea grain deal, which expires on Monday.
We are preparing to welcome Putin in Turkey in August, and we agree on the extension of the Black Sea grain corridor.
Russian President Vladimir Putin commented on the details of his meeting with the Wagner military group and dispelled doubts about the possibility of preserving the group as a combat unit. In an interview to a national media, the head of state affirmed that they talked about the mutiny attempt and their performance in the battlefield. The 35 members of the private group were informed about the possibilities of their incorporation to military service and even of their role in the operations. President Putin explained that their continued service as a combat unit should be discussed by the State Duma because legally they do not exist. Putin also regretted that after fighting so bravely, they were dragged into the June 24th affair. On Friday, Chinese authorities criticized the counterproductive security strategy adopted by the German government, adding it would only exacerbate division in the world. China accused German authorities of promoting economic protectionism, following Germany's call to German companies to reduce their dependence on Chinese suppliers.
The Chinese side has taken note of the relevant document released by the German side. We believe that making use of competition and protectionism in the name of de-risking and reducing dependence to securitize and politicize normal cooperation will only produce the opposite of the intended result and create man-made risk. To draw the line based on values and ideologies to claim the so-called competition of systems, interests and values goes against the trend of the times and will only exacerbate divisions in the world.
France celebrates on July 14th its National Day to remember the storming of the Bastille with the traditional military parade on the Champs-Élysées and a concert followed by fireworks with the Eiffel Tower as a witness. President Emmanuel Macron and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, guest of honor, participated in the event. After 2 years of restrictions due to COVID-19, the celebrations returned in all their splendor. More than 6,000 troops, 181 armored vehicles, 64 airplanes and 25 helicopters marched in the celebration. The military parade is framed in a context of international tension due to the conflict in Ukraine and domestic conflicts. In this sense, the government deployed 140,000 security forces to secure the celebrations during the weekend. The Indian government described the European Parliament's resolution on Manipur as unacceptable and said it reflects the colonial mentality of the European body. In the context of a state visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi to France, the European Parliament adopted a resolution in which it pointed out that in the state of Manipur, where ethnic clashes have left at least 100 dead, human rights are violated and the rule of law is not respected. The Indian Foreign Ministry recommended the European Parliament address its own internal problems and abandon the colonial mentality. Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel kicked off on Friday his work agenda in Portugal as part of an official state visit aimed at furthering bilateral ties. Díaz-Canel held an official meeting with Portuguese President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa, in which, according to Cuba's foreign ministry, both nations confirmed the will to deepen the political, cultural, economic, and collaborative relations in different areas of common interest. The Cuban president was also welcomed earlier by the President of the Assembly of the Republic, Augusto Santos Silva, in a meeting which was also attended by leaders of political parties and members of the Parliamentary Group of Friendship with Cuba. Díaz-Canel expressed his confidence that this visit will contribute to the expansion of bilateral relations between the nations, which have been uninterrupted for 140 years. In this context, both presidents inaugurated on Friday in Lisbon a bust in tribute to Cuban hero José Martí. The installation of the work is the result of the collaboration between Cuban and Portuguese peoples with the interest of promoting cultural ties and friendship between both peoples. The president of the Cuban delegation in Portugal will continue until Sunday. Afterwards, Díaz-Canel, accompanied by Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez and First Deputy Minister of Foreign Trade Ana Teresita González, will participate in the European Union Community of Latin American and Caribbean States Summit in Brussels on July 17th and the 18th. TeleSUR English launches its own videos on demand site for you to go and revisit our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Just go to the top left corner in our website homepage and click on the video option to access our VOD platform. Now we're going to take a fun short break. Don't go away. Welcome back from the south. In Indonesia, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said the countries of the region should strengthen cooperation and face challenges together. The statements came during the foreign ministers' meeting of ASEAN Plus 3. The Chinese diplomat called on the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, Japan and South Korea, to accelerate the process of regional integration. In this sense, Wang reiterated the countries of the region must push economic recovery and also recalled that China has provided support for economic and technological cooperation under the Comprehensive Economic Partnership and help Asian countries improve their capacity to implement the Free Trade Agreement. In this context, Chinese spokesman Wang Wenbin highlighted the positive cooperation China and ASEAN have maintained over the past 2 decades.
Over the past 20 years, China and ASEAN have actively acted on the purpose and principles in the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation in Southeast Asia, expanding mutually beneficial cooperation in all directions, and successfully worked out a correct path of permanent good neighborly friendship and common development and prosperity. The two sides have worked together to promote the building of a community with a shared future, the construction of the Belt and Road, the development of regional economic integration, and the consolidation of foundation for peace and stability.
Syrian ambassador to the United Nations Bassam Sabak said his government took the sovereign decision to grant permission to the UN to deliver humanitarian aid. The authorization is granted to all UN agencies and will be extended for 6 months. The decision was made public after the Security Council suspended the mechanisms used for nearly 10 years by the UN and its partners to deliver aid cross-border to areas outside the control of the Syrian government. Russia vetoed a continuation of that strategy. The Syrian ambassador confirmed that he had told the UN Secretary General that they could use the Bab al-Hawa crossing on the border with Turkey. The International Criminal Court announced an investigation for war crimes in Sudan. The conflict that began in April has already claimed more than 3,000 lives. The ICC move comes after numerous reports of the war incites brutality, the discovery of mass graves, and the bombing of residential areas. Authorities in Western Darfur believe it comes late, as they have reported extrajudicial executions, massacres, violations, and all kinds of sexual crimes for over a month. The UN Special Envoy to the country, Volker Perthes, called General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and Mohamed Daglo, leaders of the warring groups, to account. In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, presidential candidate Moise Katumbi described the murder of Cherubin Okende, spokesperson for the opposition party Together for the Republic, as a political crime. On Thursday, Cherubin Okende was found dead inside his car with his body riddled with bullets, 5 months before the elections in the Central African country. The victim was invited to a work session at the Constitutional Court on that day, but on Wednesday night he was declared missing by his colleagues. Moise Katumbi denounced that the crime was intended to silence his organization and announced an independent investigation to establish the truth. On Friday, the United Nations reported that there are 165 million new poor in the world after 3 consecutive years of crisis. The pandemic, inflation, and the Ukraine crisis leaves a worrying picture. Future projections are so alarming that from the United Nations headquarters they are calling for a pause in the debt reimbursements of developing countries. Experts are confident that the measure could reverse the trend. According to the UN Development Programme, the cumulative impact of this crisis led 75 million people to fall into extreme poverty between 2020 and 2023. At the same time, another 90 million people were pushed below the poverty threshold. We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website, TeleSURenglish.net. Also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.